Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, as an increasing number of prominent French male figures stand accused of sexual assault, students at one of the country's top universities are using social media to highlight allegations of rape. Also, a World Bank report reveals there's been some progress in governments adopting laws that boost equality, but I'll be talking to its Managing Director on Development Policy, Marie Pengastou, on why there's still so much more that needs to be done. And how the owner of a house in Oakland, California, is allowing an artist to use it as a canvas to celebrate the women of the Black Panther movement. But first, French film director Gérard Depardieu has been placed under investigation over accusations of rape and sexual assault. It's the latest in a string of such allegations against prominent figures here in France. Depardieu being accused of assaulting and raping a young woman in 2018. The 72-year-old actor has denied the allegations. Now, this happening as a number of students at Sciences Po University and its affiliated campuses have raised a series of rape and sexual abuse allegations against the country's top educational establishment. Sciences Po being where many of the country's politicians, leading civil servants and the media elite are educated. Emerald Maxwell has the story.
Another institution rocked by sexual assault allegations. Dozens of students of France's top political science college, Sciences Po, have shared their experiences with the hashtag SciencesPor, or Science Pigs, from the university's nationwide campuses.
During my orientation weekend, a student took advantage of the fact that I was completely drunk to sexually assault me while I was unconscious.
One of the second years who was looking after us groped me in front of everyone using the organised entertainment as a cover.
A young student at the campus in Toulouse was at the origin of this new shockwave, and she described a sexual assault 3 years ago by an older student a few days into her first year at the university.
He brought me to his room, where I told him I was drunk and I didn't want to do it, but I froze in fear, and he raped me. Afterwards, he fell asleep, and I began to cry.
It's a type of abuse that's enabled, Juliette claims, by a sexist environment at the school.
I'm speaking out against fresher initiations, against the domination of second years over first years, of men over women, because at Sciences Po's Toulouse campus at least, there may be fewer men, but they're still more powerful.
This student, who wanted to remain anonymous, says he's noticed misogynistic behaviour, but that it's not specific to Sciences Po.
It's at parties that we really see it.
See what?
People that are sometimes too forward, aggressive.
And you've seen boys do this yourself?
Yes, I have. And in fact, not just at Sciences Po, but at lots of parties.
Juliette has now filed a complaint, and the Public Prosecutor's Office has opened a preliminary investigation into rape. After meeting with Juliette, the Vice-Chancellor of Sciences Po Toulouse took measures against her presumed aggressor.
He will receive an order banning access to the building, but the law obliges us to allow him continued access to distance learning.
France's Minister of Higher Education has encouraged any other victims to come forward, reminding them of their right to free legal counsel.
Now, here's a tiny bit of good news. More and more governments are putting gender equality measures into place. That is according to a new report by the World Bank on women, business and the law. But, and yes, there's always a but, it also found reforms to remove obstacles have been slow in many regions and that many laws hinder women's ability to work or start a business, not helped, of course, by the global pandemic. Joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Marie Pengastou, the Managing Director of Development Policy and Partnerships at the World Bank. Thank you so much for your time. Let's start with the good news. What progress has been made by governments when it comes to implementing policies encouraging women's economic opportunities?
Out of the 141 countries, actually, the good news is that there has been an improved performance across the board for all countries. And the highest performers are North Africa and the Middle East. And we have seen also innovative measures being introduced on childcare, as well as benefits and access to justice and safety by enabling, for instance, remote or virtual access to courts during the pandemic. So I think overall we see good progress, but of course much more needs to be done.
And that's what I want to ask you next. In what areas does work still need to be carried out?
A lot more, and I just want to emphasize the case for why this is important, which is the economic case. We still see a large gap in women and men's rights for entering the workforce and opening business. And for instance, labor force participation rate for women actually went down from 51% in 2000 to 47% in 2020. So 75% of legal rights afforded to men and reforms need to be accelerated according to our a review of the 141 countries. I would say there's a couple of areas that we need to accelerate on in the areas of equal economic participation, closing the remaining gender gaps, including completion of school, and with the crisis, girls returning to school has to become a priority for us. Removing constraints for women so they can have better jobs like safe transportation, child and elder care, training in digital and technological skills, and removing occupational sex segregation, and removing the barriers to women's ownership and control of assets, as well as access to finance. And finally, access of women's voices in agencies and decision making to tackle, really, I think in a lot of the countries we work in, tackling child marriage, gender-based violence, and social norms, and women's participation in government.
And the pandemic clearly hasn't helped.
Yes, it has. It has not helped. We see that women are the most likely affected, losing their jobs, having to stay home and take care of children. They are also subject to increased gender-based violence. We think girls are less likely to go back to school, and they're also getting disadvantaged with the health services. Women's health services are also being reduced because of the attention to the pandemic. And women-owned businesses are likely to close down compared to men-owned businesses.
So in this case, is this happening because in so many parts of the world, female participation in politics and governance is still very low? I mean, the fact is it's still men who are politicians and civil servants who are indeed crafting those laws and regulations.
Yes, I think we have to do two things. This is from my own experience. We need to have more women in decision making, or be involved in the decision making at all levels, not just at the highest level, but at a community level. And you also need to, of course, have a behavioral and mindset change on the men who are involved in the decision making. And if women are not going to be part of the decision making, it is going to be very hard to get the progress that we need to make. If you want to, I can give you an anecdote where we went to a village in Ethiopia, and if the men, there was a amount of money that the village could decide what to use for. The men chose to a parabola so they could watch football. The women, of course, chose how can I build a pipe to the river so that I spend less time getting the water. That's just to give you a concrete example why women need to be part of the decision making.
Mary Pengastu, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Annette.
Turning now to Oakland, California, where a group of women is honouring the Black Panther movement. Once considered a great threat to the US government, over the decades perceptions have changed. For Black History Month, one homeowner has found a way to pay tribute to the role of women in the movement. Monty Francis has the story.
Soul energy will be in there.
Jill Christina Vest decided to move to West Oakland for one reason. She wanted to be close to the history of the Black Panther movement. Her home just across the street from where founding member Huey Newton was killed, she's bringing attention to the role women played in the organization.
70% of the Panther Party was made up of women. And at the height of their membership, you had chapters that were 3-to-1 women and 5-to-1 women. Chapters were led by women. Chapters were opened by women.
The Black Panthers came to prominence in the mid-1960s as a response to racism and police violence. They began the practice of cop watching, monitoring Oakland police officers, and under the open carry laws did so armed. They struck fear in much of white America, and J. Edgar Hoover, who was FBI director at the time, called the group the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. Decades later, perceptions have changed. With the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, the women behind these murals say the issues the Panthers confronted so many decades ago are still present now.
I mean, the Panthers were in the past. Everything that they did, everything that they fought for, everything that they believed in, and everything that they were hoping to change, we're still doing that. We're still hoping to change that.
Artist Rachel Wolfe Goldsmith took on the challenge.
So we have one woman protesting. She'll have buttons that are relevant to all of the stuff that was going on then and now. And then we have the woman with the rifle kind of watching over everything. And then I wanted to bring that all together with the woman who is in her medical outfit and holding her child.
Once ignored by the past, women are reflected in this artwork to highlight a part of history that is rarely told.
And that's it for this edition. You can also connect with us via our Facebook page, that of course being France24.51%, or do send us a tweet at _51%. So until our next show, bye for now.